Hello and welcome to Retro Reviews, my channel where I review my favorite retro video games of all time as well as some modern releases I have recently finished. Today I want to talk about a sequel to a game that I absolutely adored, Banjo-Tooie for the Nintendo 64. Now I had a really good friend of mine that's a lifelong Banjo fan who told me that Banjo-Kazooie was his favorite franchise and that Banjo-Tooie he thinks he likes a little bit better than Banjo-Kazooie, and I absolutely loved it. I reviewed Banjo-Kazooie earlier on the channel. I gave it a platinum rank. I said it was absolutely fantastic, the gold standard for 3D platformers. Everything I had to say about the game was praise, so I was really excited about Banjo-Tooie. If it was bigger and better with everything that Banjo-Kazooie built, I was excited to see what they would do with the sequel. And right out the gate, it is much bigger. You start off with all the stuff that you had in the original game. You have all the power-ups. You don't have to re-unlock them. I think that's a really nice thing that developers will do with a sequel. If they have a bunch of unlockables, just keep all those unlocked and give us some new stuff. And they give you a lot of new stuff in every single world that you go into. Now, Banjo-Tooie starts off with a crazy, shocking thing that happens. Bottles, the mole that gives you all the advice in Banjo-Kazooie, dies. Gruntilda kills him. Straight up, he becomes a ghost. And there are little things that happen throughout the game as you go back to his house. His kids will comment about when's daddy coming home, and the missus talking about how she's making food for him. He better not be late for dinner. And it's pretty sad, and Banjo and Kazooie just kind of have to dodge the issue. It's kind of a frightening thing. I think Banjo-Tooie took a step toward the more mature side of things for Rareware. Actually, one of the things I really love about Banjo-Tooie, one of the biggest things I love about this game, is the more mature humor. Now, it's present in all the games. They have lots of innuendos and jokes, but most of them are subtle enough that adults would definitely easily catch them, but other kids would just think it was a funny name. And Banjo-Tooie kind of dials this up as much as they possibly could without going over that E rating. Because there's some seriously funny jokes in this stuff, way more mature humor. There's also a point where I think one of the characters dies, gets I don't know if he falls into pieces and there's green gore coming out of him. Very reminiscent of Conker. I think Banjo-Tooie was the stepping stone for Rare to get to Conker's Bad Fur Day, which I absolutely love. I'm all about that. I think the humor in this game is really fantastic, and I love that they were able to make it a little bit edgier and make it more fun for the adult audience playing these games. That's where one of the biggest things I really loved about this game. I also loved the presentation at the beginning. You're presented with a big open hub world. Instead of having, it's very similar to the original. You'll explore various parts of this hub world to unlock new worlds to go into and explore and find more jiggies so you can unlock more. But in this, they have a more overarching and very connected hub world. So much so that you can actually use fast travel points with this new military mole guy, that he's the one that teaches you all of the new moves and everything, and he'll give you access to the underground tunnels so that you can fast travel throughout the world. And you will definitely need that because the world is huge. The hub world is enormous. In fact, it's kind of a chore to get around. Once you start unlocking more of these areas, and you have to kind of backtrack to the beginning and go into this Jiggy temple and solve a puzzle when you have enough Jiggies to unlock a new world. You have to backtrack back there and then go find the area that has been unlocked. At first, it's not a big deal. It feels fairly linear. You have a good path in mind where to go. But as you progress throughout the game, it gets less and less easy to find them. Now, if you just use a quick look up on a guide, it's no big deal. But I remember a couple of times I had 20 minutes of searching for this area, not knowing where the heck I was supposed to go to the next place. I didn't love that. I don't love the hub world nearly as much as the original, but it's fine. And the fact that it's bigger and there's more to do and more to explore in the hub world itself is actually pretty cool. And I like a lot about it, but it doesn't always hit the right notes for me. Now let's talk about the worlds as well. The worlds don't feel nearly as iconic as the original. You don't have nearly as many locales that really feel as inspired to me, at least, but they do have a lot of really interesting places nonetheless. You have a mine, I think it's called Glitter Gulch. You have this mine that you explore, and you can do all sorts of stuff with the train tracks, mine carts. It's a really nice theming. You have another place that is a completely water world that you go underwater. You get a power-up so you can explore underwater without having to go up for air. Interesting mechanic. You have another place that's up in the sky and is absolutely enormous. You can fly around the entire thing. You have a fire and ice world, tons of locales. In fact, the more I played this game, the more I realized this game is enormous. For being a Nintendo 64 game, there are so many worlds present here. And I think that's really impressive that Rare was able to do that. For the most part, it didn't see many like stutters or issues either. It runs pretty darn well. And I have to commend them for building such an enormous game on a hardware like the Nintendo 64. Now, I don't love each and every world that's presented, though. I like a lot of aspects of them, but I think most of them are too big for their own good. They're very large and very open, and there's not a lot to do in some places. And so you just end up wandering around looking for the next thing to do. There's plenty of spots where you won't be able to progress and get certain jiggies or unlockables because you haven't unlocked a new upgrade. So you'll have to backtrack later on to go, which is fine. I actually don't mind that mechanic at all. I usually enjoy that kind of thing. I like the Metroidvania style of getting a new power-up, going back later on to unlock new doors, new areas, get more collectibles. But in this game, it feels like a chore. Because the worlds are so big, I tried to get as much done as I could. And then returning to it later, because it felt mandatory at one point, I just didn't feel compelled to go on for all the collectibles. And that's the biggest thing that I really did not love about Banjo-Tooie. I love collectathons. I really do. Donkey Kong 64 has the most collectibles in any video game ever, and I love collecting all of them. I think it's so much fun. Banjo-Tooie, I don't feel that drive. I didn't feel it enough to collect everything, and that's very rare for me in a 3D platformer. I usually want to do everything that there is to offer, but this game, I felt more driven to finish it rather than complete it. And it's a shame because there's a lot going for it, but there's just so much that didn't quite work for me. Let's talk about some of the things that did work. First and foremost, there's the first area you go into, you'll uncover a section pretty early on that is very much a Doom clone, where you get Kazooie in the Briggle Blaster position and you shoot eggs as you go through a Doom style level. It's awesome. These sections are fantastic. They are beautiful representations of Doom and of Quake, of the shooters of the era. And the fact that they did this on the Nintendo 64 is really cool, and I love it. They nailed it on the head. And when they do stuff like this, when they're like almost parodying or paying homage to other genres, they do an excellent job of doing so. I also really love a lot of the collectibles that happen throughout the world. One of the biggest things that I love that they changed from the original Banjo-Kazooie is that in each world in Banjo-Kazooie, you had to go and get every single music note in one go to essentially check it off. If you miss one, you have to go back in and do the entire thing over again. They respawn, essentially. So I really didn't like that mechanic nearly as much, and in Banjo-Tooie they rectified that completely. You can go back in and you'll collect just the ones that you've been missing. You don't have to pick up the same ones that you originally picked up the first time. You don't have to do them all in one go, which is fantastic. And they're also in groups of 5 and all the way up to 20, so it works perfectly well to just pick them up much faster. It makes it an easier collectible to deal with. Jinjos are also different. Instead of having 5 in each world, maybe 6, I think it's 5, different colored Jinjos in each world that you collect, you now have a total number of each color throughout the entire game. And once you get all of them, you gain a Jiggy, and you also unlock some little cutscene that goes on with the Jinjo village. They'll return to their house. Every time you collect one, you'll see like, oh, I've got 8 of the 9 black Jinjos, or a few of the red ones. It's kind of nice to see that. I don't like it quite as much as the original. I like having just the 5 in one world and picking them up and knowing that I'm finishing them, because I don't know how many, I know how many Jinjos are in each world if I check the view totals, but I'm not always aware that there's going to be 5. Instead, there could be 4 or 3 or a bunch. There are also fake Jinjos, which are super annoying. They're mechanical little dudes. When you walk up to them, they run after you and they can damage you. Super annoying, and I hate them. So fighting real Jinjos feel like more of a chore for me in this game, and I think that's why I don't like them nearly as much. I also think just some of the challenges are not nearly as fun. I didn't find myself having a lot of fun in this game when I would get up against something that just didn't feel as good. In Banjo-Kazooie, if I found something that was a little frustrating or tedious, I could power through it and get done and then move on to the more fun stuff later on. But in this game, I just felt like sometimes it droned on. The biggest offender was the the lagoon area, the underwater section. It was a full 3D area of only water level. Because you could breathe underwater, you never had to come up. There was no land. It's just an underwater level, and it does not work. It does not play well. I got so frustrated with it, I dropped the game for a couple months and did not want to come back to it. And I came back, I couldn't figure it out some more. Even with like a guide, I was struggling to figure out what the heck was going on, where I was, and I had to drop it for another week. Came back, decided I'm going to dive in and get this done, and I finally passed through that level, and I never looked back. I only got like 4 jiggies. I was done. I never wanted to see that place ever again. And the biggest problem when you get to the end of this game, if you've gotten 55 jiggies, you can unlock the last world. You can go and face Gruntilda in a game show, but to actually fight her for the final boss encounter, you have to have 70. You have to get 15 more. So if you have been scraping by because some of the worlds are less interesting or less fun to explore, you have to go back through these other worlds and unlock some more stuff. One of the nice things, though, as you're progressing through each world, you'll actually do things in one world that affects another world. Like if I hit some switch, do some sequence, it'll unlock a jiggy in a previous world that was inaccessible to you before. There's also a train that passes through each and every level that you can just go from world to world instead of going back to the hub world. So, and once you unlock it in the area, then you're good to go wherever you want. It's awesome. I love the train. I think it's a really cool idea. It's its own character. It's like a mini boss fight to unlock him in the first place. I think it's a brilliant mechanic, and again, it's genius that they've been able to actually incorporate this into the game because it's so huge. And the fact that you can just freely travel from world to world without going back to the hub world, I don't know how much programming savvy that had to take, but I'm sure it was immense. So I have to commend them for how interconnected everything feels. On the whole, this game is really fun to play. I don't love all the new mechanics they introduce, but they introduce a lot of them. You can switch and change from just being Banjo and Kazooie individually. They have like a split up pad, and they get their own individual upgrades. Unfortunately, you have to find the mole as just Banjo or just Kazooie to unlock the certain move. You can't just go there together or go there as the other one to unlock the moves. It makes it really frustrating if you finally find the little hidey hole where he gives you the move, just for him to say, nope, you got to come back just as Banjo, or you got to come back just as Kazooie, or you have to come back together, which is really annoying. But they get their own moves, like if Banjo's by himself, he swings his backpack instead of doing like a tuck and roll. He can carry things in his backpack. He can jump into his backpack and sleep, like hibernate to regain health. He can throw the backpack over him to go into hot and cold things and not take damage. He can throw it under him to jump on spiky stuff. Kazooie can fly. She can like glide really far. She's much faster. She can jump much higher all by herself. Lots of cool things. But I found myself unlocking these mechanics and not using them more than once or twice max. And that was the biggest problem with them. You also get like 5 different egg varieties, which is really cool. You have their normal eggs, you have fire eggs, you have grenade eggs, which are fantastic. You have ice eggs. You have a little like remote controlled robot Kazooie that can blow up if you track it and move it around. You have like 10 seconds to get it to blow up. You'll mostly default to using grenade eggs. You'll use fire and ice eggs a handful of times. The grenade egg that has the little mini Kazooie in there, even less than that. So it just feels like there's not much utility for all these new moves that you unlock. And if there is, you probably have forgotten how to do the mechanic by the time you get to the spot where you need to use it again, because it's used so infrequently. That's my biggest gripe about this game. I think it's too ambitious for its own good. There just is too much going on. I think the worlds are a little bit too big and not as pointed enough, as direct enough. You can get lost in them. It's hard to get all the collectibles. I really just did not find myself wanting to get all the collectibles. For the most part, the boss fights are pretty fun, or at least serviceable. I found myself enjoying several of them. Not nearly as exciting as the originals, though, in my opinion. All in all, this is a great sequel in a lot of ways, but I think they went too hard trying to get this done in such a short amount of time, too. It did not come out very long after the original Banjo-Kazooie, or after Donkey Kong 64 even. I think it was 2 years after the original. So I think if they let it cook just a little bit longer, this could have been a really exceptional game. But if you're just going in for another Banjo experience and you want to just go through, you're not worried about collectibles, you'll probably find a pretty good experience. Everything feels just as tight. There are new things to explore. Some of the new things like the Doom areas are really fun, and they happen every now and again, and I really enjoyed them. There is a lot of fun to be had in this game. There's just also a lot of things dragging it down for me. Overall, though, it's still a Banjo experience. It's still a great collectathon. It is still a rare experience, so this is incredibly well made. Despite my gripes with it, I still ended up having a good time and made it all the way to the end once I got past that water level. But after that, I think I'd had much less frustration. So this game is one where I would recommend using a guide to get, if you're going for everything, because you can get kind of lost in the sauce. This is a really fun title. But going for everything, it just isn't worth it for me. So I'm going to give Banjo-Tooie a gold ranking. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.